Hi guys. Get started. Got a decent amount to cover here, so try to kind of fly through it. But so what we're going to be talking about today is basically some SEO training. Also talking about some recent trends within the industry, more specifically the impact that reviews are starting to have on SEO in general. More specifically, your Google ranking them. So obviously Google is the site that is pretty dominant from a search standpoint, and that we probably get the most questions, or we need the most knowledge about when speaking with our clients. So we're going to be going through a few different studies and surveys, taking a look at some of the recent results and some of the takeaways that we can take from that. So this is meant to be interactive. Definitely feel free to pause me at any time to go over questions. There's a lot of good data in here. I'll be sending this presentation out afterwards, so you guys will have it to reference. You can start taking parts and sending them to clients as needed as well. There will be a little quiz at the end with some gift card prizes, so pay attention. For a lot of you that have been here a while, a lot of this is going to be review, but we obviously have a lot of new people. It's a good refresher anyway, and I actually learned a decent amount even preparing for this, so I think everyone here will be able to take some stuff away from the preparation. Yeah. Cool. So again, we're going to focus mostly on Google and how you can impact your Google ranking. I mean, that's probably local SEO's biggest challenging question is, how can I achieve the best ranking possible on Google? How can I outrank my competitors? How do I appear for, different keyword searches? So to help answer those questions, we're going to be looking at a few things here. We'll start with an industry overview, really so you get a feel for the landscape and why Google dominates search and why it's so important that clients have a focused strategy around their listings and their search presence on Google, and ways that ChatMeter can help with that. We're going to look at some recent research from industry experts. There's a really famous survey within the industry. Again, some of you that have been around a while, you've probably heard of the local ranking factor survey that Moz Local has historically powered, and it involves some of the most influential SEO experts within the industry, where they kind of debate and vote on what are the most important ranking factors on Google that they're seeing with their clients. One thing to note with the Google algorithm is that it's obviously kind of proprietary, mysterious. That's why people have to go to such great lengths with, tracking results on their side and what they're seeing, and what really moves the needle on Google, because Google's not going to just tell you. Otherwise, everyone would, it would just be a simple arms race based on what Google's ranking based on. So, and it evolves over time. Obviously, new factors come into the industry, even Google features. So recently, they released Google posting and Q&A. So, you got to be able to be dynamic and kind of stay on top of those industry trends, so that you have an advantage over competition who's not. We're going to look at a really detailed study that was done as well, based on essentially like 100,000 search queries that were tracked and then aggregated to look for commonalities around businesses that rank well. So those are kind of the two main studies that we're going to be looking at specifically. We'll also be talking about a study that was done on the impact of proximity. So now that pretty much any device you're on, Google can track where you're located, and they try to, give the most convenient as well as optimal results for your search, whether it's on your phone or desktop. So what role does proximity really play in that? Then we'll kind of wrap things up by summarizing the results and key takeaways, how you can position these things with your clients. And then lastly, we're going to take a brief look at the landscape for service area businesses because it is a little bit different. We'll be defining that and how it's different towards the end, but we do have a few service area business clients already. I think we have pest control client, that's a service area business. We have, look at the name, there's a client that runs leagues all over, yeah, I-9 Sports for their service area business as well. So we do have some experience working with those, and I'm sure even, you know, standards and ethics could speak to some of the nuances and challenges that presents as well. All right, so why is this all important? I mean, we all know that obviously Google is important, but just to put some additional context behind that. So these are based on various studies and articles that I found. But 77% of search is done on Google. That's up from 67%. You know, you used to hear all the time as a rule of thumb, oh, Google dominates 2/3 of traffic. It's actually higher than that now. It's over 3/4. 4.64 billion Google searches are performed per day. Google stated that about 1/3 of their searches have local intent, but other agencies have actually found that number to be higher in some cases. HubSpot, in fact, says that almost 50%, so 46% of searches on Google are local. 38% more local searches conducted on phones compared to desktops. Obviously, the way smartphones are now and how they've just exploded with functionality, in a lot of cases, they kind of substitute for computers. You can perform searches wherever you're located. So obviously mobile search is really, really important.
I think it's 50-50 in 2015.
Oh, really?
So that's a massive change.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the major things to note with mobile searches, though, typically, especially if you're looking for like a product or service, you're interested in going somewhere, buying something that day, they often result in store visits. So 50% of local visits actually result in a store visit, and 18% of mobile searches lead to a sale within a day. So if clients aren't understanding the impact of, you know, optimizing around local, whether it's their website or how important listings are, because, you know, listings tend to dominate local search results, that's why. Leads to people in your door, leads to people buying products from you. Not offhand, but probably look that up fairly easily. Obviously, that's tremendously rising day by day as well. Just to start off with some definitions, so when we refer to these throughout the presentation, you guys know what they mean. You'll hear these a lot within the industry as well. People refer to the local pack. That's like the top 3 results that you get on a Google search. You can always click more to see the full list, but obviously if you're ranked in the local pack, that's ideal. Some people don't go beyond the local pack, so if you're in the 1, 2, or 3 positions, you're obviously getting significant more amount of views and traffic, even than others on the first page. I think one stat we read fairly recently is that the number 1 position actually outranks 2, 3, 4, and 5 combined. So clearly a goal to work your way up to the number 1 position. In the local pack, it's kind of a summary of information that's displayed. It will show you the average review rating, the category, the description, hours, and in certain industries like restaurants, they'll show like photo and pricing details as well. So it tries to give the consumer a decent amount of knowledge about the business.
We know how they're coming up with like happy hour food, happy hour drinks in categories, or
yeah. So those are ones that you actually in and out of the business, right? Yeah. So that's obviously a newer Google My Business feature as well. Think of it as almost like keyword tagging. Our clients should definitely be taking advantage of attributes, and I know we pretty much push that with every listing management client that we have.
clearly communicate terms for the category and an attribute? Difference between a category and an attribute. Yeah. So categories like that. Restaurant or something like that. Attributes are really like subcategories of keywords on the listing. And for restaurant, they can select everything from like a wall, open for breakfast, lunch, kid friendly, wheelchair accessible, not wheelchair accessible. There's just tons of them, and you go into locations for people who have this place around here. So it's a lot of people who show them, but do we know if, like, you type in happy hour drinks for some, those attributes, is that sliding way up on the right? I'm looking at yeah, well, keywords in our dashboard. I'm thinking what because it's like categories attributes are different more unique hotels. So soft hotels, that's actually looking at hotels and those
Yeah, it seems obvious that Google would use those attributes with search results for those specific terms. And that's kind of yeah. It's one of the main purposes of them in general. SERP. So this term gets thrown around a lot. It's sort of confusing, but the way I like to think of it in the most simple of manners is it's kind of like our web results, except that it includes things like ads and like schema or snippets. It's basically the results that a consumer gets in their browser when they search for something. And so I've kind of broke down some of the most important sections within search. Typically, the sponsored ads are at the top for Google. They've played around with positioning quite a bit. It seems like they've kind of abandoned the ads on the right side of the browser and are more so focused on the top. They've really tried to optimize engagement around ads as well, trying to kind of minimize how much they're called out. Because typically, I mean, consumers are smart where they know ads, people pay for that, and they're somewhat biased. So they were naturally inclined to just scroll through them. Google's tried to like optimize around that, obviously, so that clients get a return on their investment. So they're always kind of playing around with what gets the most engagement. So this screenshot's a little tough to see because it's zoomed out, but again, I'll turn this deck after the presentation. But just so you guys know, this search was for furniture store, and so it has some sponsored businesses at the top and the local pack. So those are like the organic local rankings. That's the ideal spot to appear. And then below that are the actual organic web results. So those are like the actual website results. So for example, I searched for this from my desktop. I didn't enter any sort of local area, but it picked up the fact that I'm in San Diego. And so like living spaces and drones are like the top two organic results. So obviously, you know, they have very good organic SEO. They're actually the first like true web results that people in San Diego are seeing when they search. So there are a few things you can do to kind of optimize your SERP and how you'll appear. Again, talked about kind of like snippets and schema that Google can read and then display some of that information. That's where they'll pick up some of the like descriptions for the business. You can also use title tags, which is how you want to like title your web page essentially. So drones, for example, has their link actually listed as Jerome's Southern California Home Furniture Stores. So that's strategic in a lot of ways. They listed a local area within the title tag, Southern California, to try to drive as much traffic from the surrounding area as possible. And then they included furniture stores, so actually describing the type of business they are as well. So for Chatmeter, obviously we have like, you know, reputation management, local SEO in our title tag. It's just not just like Chatmeter and then the link. So, I mean, that's something that savvy SEO webmasters pay a lot of attention to. Google has some other kind of Google specific features that show up in SERPs depending on the type of search that it is. So the knowledge graph is a common one. That's typically if you search for a specific business, you'll see it pulls up its little profile on the right. So that's a knowledge graph that Google has formed based on what they know about the business. Sometimes they'll show like third-party reviews there if they're able to pick that up. Celebrities have knowledge graphs in a lot of cases, and they'll get a lot of that content from like the Wikipedia page. Again, depending on the industry, they may show some photos at the top, or they may have some like shopping links. So a lot of different kind of dynamic content that you can see in the SERPs. So all of that, you know, is basically there for the consumer to engage with and click on whatever they want, whether it's a photo, you know, a listing to call the business, or actually visit their website. They have a lot of options. Any questions about SERPs? Google Maps, a little more traditional, a little more straightforward. That's obviously the Maps results. That's what we currently pull Google rankings for. There's 20 rankings per page. That number's kind of expanded over time. You see, again, kind of a summary of the business and their info on the left and where they're located on the map. And again, these results are largely driven by the location that the search is coming from, obviously. So that's a key factor. Again, we'll get into proximity a bit later and exactly how that impacts results. All right, so now we're gonna take kind of that background knowledge and applying it to some recent studies. We're gonna look at the local ranking factors survey run by Darren Shaw. Again, that's the historical survey that's run annually. It's traditionally seen as like a Moz type of report. Darren actually doesn't work at Moz. He took it over for David Mem. A lot of you that know the industry well probably know that name as well. This includes lots of experts in the industry. I think it's around 40. One of the slides later will give a little more detail on that. But again, they're looking at like hundreds of different ranking factors and basically stack ranking them based on importance and what they're seeing as trends on Google listings. And then the ranking factors, keep in mind though, that one is still somewhat subjective. It's a survey. So yes, it is based on a lot of factual information that experts have, but it's still, at the end of the day, somewhat subjective. Whereas we're going to look at a study that produces pretty similar results, but is actually way more objective. That's literally based on the results that are run across, like I said, like hundreds of thousands of searches. So we'll compare the two and see how they're slightly different, but also, you know, what trends are definitely surfacing any way you look at it. So again, yeah, so Darren Shaw's ranking factors survey, again, 40 of the top professionals. They're looking at 130 different factors and kind of stack ranking them. Andrew Shotland's local SEO guide ranking factor study is looking at 3,000 keyword searches across 150 cities, basically 100,000 different results based on these keyword searches that they're finding, and kind of aggregating all of those and identifying the most important factors. This is Darren Shaw. Just like to put a face to the name, he's really big within the industry. Some of you may have even met him or seen him at trade shows. So he's pretty influential. He's also, he seems very approachable. He interacts with local businesses, agencies. He's pretty responsive if you have questions for him. He seems very open to helping. He's very passionate about the industry. So Yes.
All wrong, guy.
Yeah, great guy. So just before we dive into results, just getting some additional terminology out of the way that's used throughout their survey. So GMB signals is basically referring to your Google My Business ranking factors. That can include proximity, so how close your listing is to the person that's making the search, your primary category, whether your listing is claimed, your business name, photos, your engagement metrics like clicks to call, driving directions, website. So all those different factors that Google is tracking on your listing. It's kind of assessing how that impacts where they rank you. Personalization is not something that the business can really control. That's more around for consumers that have an open history, and Google's able to track like your search history and identify what they think they may be looking for. That can introduce some bias into the results as well. So behavioral signals it's kind of a subset of the GMB signals. Again, really focused on actual user actions on listings themselves. Link signals are inbound links to your website from other sources. So typically that's like blogs or articles, news outlets. To a lesser degree, linking around your website to like us, for example, where we have a blog. You know, we even within our own web pages, we'll refer to different blogs and kind of relink in different ways to our website. That all is still those clicks are still trackable by Google and still shows engagement. So it's not they don't rank that as highly as getting, you know, getting a mention and a link from like New York Times or Forbes and someone visiting your website from there. But they still do have somewhat of an impact. And then the on-page signals. So these are website factors, including how much content you have built out on your page, whether you have a lot of keyword references for the industry you're trying to rank for on your website. It's also looking at your local listing factors as well. So your name, address, phone, accuracy, how optimized your listings are. So all the standard stuff that we help clients with in listing management. Title tags, already referred to that. We were looking at the Jerome's example. So how you're titling your links. Even your URL structure, Google schema, all that stuff. So those are kind of outside the realm of your Google listing itself, but the other signals that it's looking at from other sources that play into your ranking. So here's the breakdown of the results from that survey. So few big things to point out here. So no surprise, but the number one most influential Google ranking factor as voted on by the professionals is GMB signals. Obviously, they're going to look at their own data set and the kind of the knowledge that they've acquired from consumer searches in Google. So those are kind of the biggest factor. And again, just to reiterate, that can include proximity, the categories you have on your listings, attributes, how many photos you have certainly plays a role as well. So Google likes photo. Google's all about engagement, even from consumers to consumers. So Dana brought up actually an interesting point around Google allows consumers to do quite a bit in terms of interacting with the business, whether that's through Q&A or whether, you know, they get some sort of survey from Google and they're submitting like their feedback to Google about the business, suggested edits sometimes around like their hours of operation, pricing, things like that.
They can also post photos to a business in general area. A lot of times from the business next door. They have a general kind of power.
Yeah, and they encourage it. So it's an uphill battle if, as a business, you're trying to fully control that and remove stuff. I mean, unless it violates one of their terms and conditions, they're most likely you're stuck with it because it is helpful to consumers for the most part. So, and it can be a good thing. I mean, a lot of times people that love the business will, you know, add their own photos of a positive experience there or a product that they bought that they love. So it can definitely be an advantage as well. of course, one of the main themes throughout this presentation that we want to focus on is how much reviews are growing in as a major factor. So when we're actually looking at the percentage change of each of these factors over the last 2 years, reviews has far and away the largest change. They're 21.5% more important and impactful to Google rankings now than they were two years ago. And this includes not just like your quantity and rating, but whether you're responding to reviews, the content within your reviews. So if the longer the review is from a customer, the better, because in a lot of cases they'll call out specific keywords or even location, like they may say this is the best restaurant in San Diego. That can help you with someone who may actually type into their search best restaurant in San Diego. So that certainly plays a key role, and that's another way to kind of organically improve your rankings without doing something really specific in terms of SEO as the business. Citation signals still really important, one of the biggest ranking factors. This one's kind of leveled out. Listing management, which is what it's referring to as citation signals, is pretty much a must-have at this point. It's foundational. To even be really included in rankings, to rank well, you're going to have a solid listing presence in terms of being listed everywhere, having consistent NAP, listing your hours, having business descriptions and categories and all that. That's kind of like the baseline must-have. So that's another another reason it's so important within the services that we offer as well. You're pretty much not even at the table if you're not managing your listings. Let's see, what else? So behavioral is, again, that's the interesting one. That's where Google's trying to customize results per person based on what it thinks they're looking for that they like. But in general, again, you can see some of the biggest movers over the last few years. Again, reviews number 1, personalization number 2, behavioral signals, link signals, a large one as well. So again, that's how many backlinks you're getting to your site from credible sources, articles, news outlets, blogs, etc. We'll go into that in a little bit more detail later on as well. Some of the ones that have declined the most, and keep in mind these are percentage changes relative to how large they were in the beginning. Like social has actually declined, but only by like 1% overall. So it's been a fairly small signal since the inception. One thing to note that actually is there's no specific evidence of this from Google, but studies have seen is that businesses who are using Google Posts are seeing a slight boost in SEO. So from that standpoint, social is probably one that could be on the rise. GMB signals has declined slightly. It's more shifted within that's the category of the types of signals. It's still number 1 overall. It's still close to 20% of the overall pie. It's just that now there's all these other factors within the industry. It's not like the end-all be-all. There's lots of different sources that Google can get information about business on besides just their Google listing. Any questions on this? This is a really good slide to provide clients to kind of educate them on, this pie and all the different factors and why they're important and why you push, reviews and listing management. It's so vital to their listings. There's a clear direct correlation. Yeah, I think this one came out in like May or June of last year. So yeah, so I would imagine that they've been doing it annually. So the 2018 one, I would imagine, will be coming pretty soon. So we'll certainly be interesting to look at that when it's released and compare it to 2017. I mean, things can change pretty quickly. So some of the key takeaways, again, GMB signal still on top despite a slight decline. Proximity within your GMB signals seems to be far and away the biggest factor. Obviously, that that's kind of conditional. Based on the size of your market and the size of the industry, whether there's more competition in a very dense area, obviously it's going to be hard. It's going to be more difficult to rank well everywhere around that area. There's a lot of options. So if you're in kind of a niche industry, like you're like a dog washer or something where you don't have much competition, obviously you're going to be able to rank a little bit further out because people have less options. And then, if you live in a small town versus a big city, obviously where we're located here downtown, that like even for Starbucks, there's so many coffee shops, restaurants, bars that are all competing with one another in such a dense area that the bulk of the results you're going to see is based on where that person's located, and not, further away to where they'd have to travel. With that being said, so you will see a lot of volatility in the local pack based on where the person's located. Even from like one street corner to the next, you can see different results in a very urban area, which is really interesting. The local pack is largely driven by proximity. So those top 3 positions, the top like 10 to 20, there isn't as much change. So you'll still likely, if you're ranking well within like your neighborhood, you're likely to rank well everywhere within the neighborhood. In terms of being on like the first page, it's just within the top results that'll largely change. So I wanted to actually highlight, just to dig into proximity a little bit more, a specific study that was done. And so this was really interesting. So an SEO expert performed, let's see, so he found 138 zip codes in Houston from some census data site. So 138 different zip codes that are considered in the Houston market. He performed the same keyword search in all of those zip codes and saw drastically different results. He was specifically searching for car accident lawyers, which obviously is a pretty competitive market. There's tons of lawyers that can help with that, especially in an urban area. So a lot of competition in a highly competitive market, a very dense market. And so he wanted to see whether those top ones truly were the top results kind of across the entire market. And he actually found that they weren't. So 82 different businesses within those 138 different searches he performed actually ranked within the local pack. No single business appeared more than 19 times or 14%. So even if you're considered like the top accident lawyer in all of Houston, the most market share you're going to see locally is 14%. And that's, again, based on proximity. So when you move from one zip to another, even though they're closely connected to one another, Google is going to zone in the results to the businesses that are closest. It's not the only factor. There's certainly, it's still vetting for like reviews and reputable businesses and things like that. But it plays way more of a role in general than some of those other factors.
We know how wide of a that is. What is 130? Talk about like the radius.
I'm not sure if you did, but I can go back and look.
Clearly, if you're 20 miles out of town, then 10 miles out of town. How many square miles is this? 627 square miles. So it could be a little skewed.
Yeah, this is obviously it's a very extreme example.
Yeah.
But it does at least speak to, again, how hard it is to rank locally, and it sort of helps with setting expectations. This webinar, actually, one of the attendees was with an agency that their primary focus is trying to help their businesses rank, and she was feeling very discouraged by the results of the study and also what she's seeing with her clients, because it makes it look like the clients aren't seeing an ROI, or all the SEO work that they're performing isn't really bearing fruit. So it's kind of an expectation that needs to be set with clients, and that you can't control like the proximity and like how many competitors are around you and the density and things like that. So you really need to focus on the factors, the other factors within the equation besides just your location that you can impact, and that still will make a difference. And one of those that's the most influential is reviews. So if you are very popular and you're getting lots of reviews, you have more reviews than your competitors, you have better reviews than your competitors, that will definitely make a difference. I actually performed my own kind of case study here where I just searched for a coffee shop from the office here. And what was really interesting to note was that one of the Starbucks downtown was the #2 result, but there were actually 3 closer Starbucks. So even within the brand itself, the stores are fluctuating based on which Starbucks Google thinks is the best. So this one had the highest rating and most reviews out of those 4. And so even though it's like 0.4 miles away instead of the one that's literally right underneath us, that got it into the local pack. So there are, again, other differentiators just besides whether you're the closest or not. And then again, some of the other things that we talked about was like link building and your listing management are obviously differentiators as well. So in general, from this survey, what are the major takeaways? Some of the things are foundational, so there must-haves, all good businesses within the industry that have an SEO strategy, that have teams focused in these areas are going to have these things. So they're basically table stakes. The main one with that is, listing management and how, we need to reinforce that with clients. In terms of the competitive differentiators, those can be, again, the amount of the quality and quantity of your reviews, how many links you're getting, the authority of the links that you're getting. So when Colin did like the local landscape training, he mentioned that, if you're getting a link from like the New York Times or Forbes, that's gonna count way more than like your local blog in terms of the authority that Google's giving links like that. So with that being said, a lot of times bigger brands just inherently are going to have an advantage there, just because they have more brand awareness in general. They tend to get a lot more links, and they have a lot more, local pages and things like that. So SMBs are going to struggle to get the same volume of backlinks. They could within their local industry if they're really popular. They can still get some blog and article mentions. But they, again, should be focusing on some of the other areas that they can control, which is making sure their listings are optimized, making sure their website is optimized for search, using title tags and things like that as well. Any questions? Okay, so let's look at a related study, but that was actually based on empirical data. So this is Andrew Shotland. I think, Colin, you saw him recently, right? Oh, okay. Yeah, so he's around a lot of industry trade shows and whatnot. I think Evan had met Darren Shaw at a recent one as well. So good to know who these guys are. Looking at a lot of the same types of factors. So GMB factors, specifically like reviews, photos, website clicks you're getting from your Google listing. Website factors, again, one of the main differences and a factor that they actually saw a lot of hard data around is how your website is ranking for the same keyword searches that correlate with local rankings. So that would be, when we think back to that Jerome's example, seeing that Jerome's had very good SEO for their website for furniture store is going to highly correlate with where Jerome's stores within local search are going to appear for a local search of furniture store. So is measuring that correlation, and you'll see that that was a very, very strong factor. Offsite factors are just, the ones associated with your listings outside of Google, and then link factors, so again, the links that you're getting back to your website. The one cool thing with this study is it got a little bit more granular, and and showed the weight of each of these kind of sub-factors within. So that was more interesting. Even seeing within like reviews, the weight of like the quantity of your reviews compared to like your review response rate, you can kind of see the weight relative to one another versus just reviews versus listings as a whole. That was one of the things that was most interesting about this study. So this is a very difficult graph to read, but essentially it's color coded based on those different types of factors that we just discussed. So the ones associated with your Google listing, the ones associated with your website, the ones associated with links that you're getting. And the interesting thing to see is, so these are ordered from the most important factor to the least. And there's obviously this outlier here in green. That is actually how your website is ranking for the same keyword search. That is far and away the most important ranking factor. It's more than double anything else. So again, businesses that have traditionally invested a lot in traditional SEO or organic SEO around their website, it's going to help them rank really well in local searches as well for those same keywords. And right, that is their website. And it makes sense that that's such a large factor, because when you think about SEO in general, it started around optimizing your website. And so it's a little bit more of a mature environment in terms of, you know, even Google's own research and the engineers that they put around, you know, SEO optimization and whatnot. It still plays a huge role. A lot of these local ranking factors are ones that are newly introduced. It's kind of a fast-pacing and newer environment. So that one is still like the biggest overall. But the next thing that I noticed from this is all the next most important ones are these orange ones, which are the Google My Business ranking factors. And so when we start to separate those out categorically, we see that, again, these are all of like the individual components within reviews or within GMB, dominated by reviews. Almost every single one of these most important factors has to do with reviews, whether it's the quantity, the number, you know, the quantity or quality that you have, the number of reviews you have that mention a keyword. So that confirms, it's pretty intuitive, but it confirms that a 5-star review where the customer goes into a lot of detail around the experience and they mention several keywords within that is going to help you rank more prominently than just 5-star reviews that have no content. And also, again, if they mention any local areas within there, like a neighborhood, like Best Restaurant in Hillcrest or in San Diego, then that's obviously going to help your ranking locally within those areas as well. And the other thing that noticed was really high is a lot of these are related to responding as well. So they actually in 2 different buckets call out number of reviews not responded to is actually more important than the number of reviews responded to. So basically, they're penalizing businesses that don't respond to their customers. And again, that's because they promote engagement. It shows businesses that have good customer service, care about the customer experience, are building loyalty, engage with their customers, are looking for ways to get better. So it makes sense that they would reward businesses that do it and penalize businesses that don't. But it's interesting to note how they kind of have that broken down. And then there are a lot of the different individual metrics around, you know, which reviews are getting responded to, what percentage, and things like that. So again, if we go backwards, I mean, all of those are most important than like the next highest factor. So that they pretty much show you that they dominate as a single component.
Can you back up, Doug?
Yeah.
Follow-up question to Ali. In the study that he was doing, was he looking at, when he talked about ranking factors or rankings, was he talking about like the business's presence? So it could be a website on page 1 of Google, or it could be their listing within the 3-pack. Do you have any clarity on that, or no?
Yeah, he was looking at specifically their the rankings on their listings. So he was looking at the 3-pack and beyond. Yeah.
So to have more clarity, essentially, still the value of your website, all of the components from an SEO perspective, whether it shows up from a ranking perspective on a regular search, it's actually impacting your visibility on a 3-pack or Google Maps. Does that make sense, everyone?
So as a group, the next most impactful factor was links. So the number of backlinks you're getting, the authority of the source of those backlinks, kind of cover that. The other thing that's really interesting is how important of a role anchor text plays in that. Anchor text is essentially the when you do hyperlink with something, what text you're using to refer to that. So ideally, you don't want people saying like, click here to go see that. Like for Chatmeter, for example, when we're getting links from marketing blogs and experts and whatnot, we want in the link to have like our name or like certain keywords like the leader in reputation management or leader in local SEO that link over to our website. That's going to help us rank better for those keywords. So that's not something you can control as a business in terms of how people are linking to you, but it is something that you can control with how you link around to your blogs and articles and content on your own website. So it is definitely a best practice that you want to be aware of.
Yeah, an easy way to think about that is the worst thing you can do on your website is say click here, and your button, the link says here. You want to make sure that it has some sort of keyword. That's what the alt tag is. That's an easy way to think about it. Click here is that. So we go.
So how your website impacts your local listing rankings as well. Again, the biggest thing is that if you've optimized your website around ranking well for keyword searches, which has to do with like the amount of content you have on your site, both in terms of on the page and other blogs that you've written, and you've kind of acquired over time authority within those ranking searches on your website, that's going to help you rank your listings rank as well. And again, that's because that's been tracked so much longer, it carries a lot more weight. So traditional SEO still has a very high correlation with your local SEO. And then some of the other things you can influence, we talked about, how you're title tagging your pages or photos or things like that. And then offsite factors, mostly around your listings. So again, citation is an inclusive factor. You pretty much have to have a solid listings presence because everyone else does. It's not necessarily going to, by itself, outrank you against the competition, but it will certainly kill you if you're not doing it. And then reviews on other sites. So even Google looks at like your rating on Yelp, TripAdvisor, all those other sites. That has an influence on how your Google ranking is going to list as well, to a small degree. So key takeaways, again, reviews as a group, huge ranking factor. Backlink, pretty important as well. Traditional SEO as a single ranking factor is the largest one. And then listing citations can be differentiators, especially if you have positive reviews everywhere else and not just in addition to Google. And that's one of the things we like to tell clients too, is that it's great to have tons of reviews on Google. A lot of people are seeing your Google listing first, but there are people that are huge fans of Yelp and they always go to Yelp to search, or now, that Facebook is becoming a lot bigger in the local, for local search as well. People will specifically go to Facebook to look, so you don't want all your reviews to just be located on Google, or you're missing out on other traffic you could be getting. All right, just comparing those two, pretty similar. In one, we saw like the power of proximity, whereas in the other, we saw the power more specifically of like reviews and your website. Citations showed up in both. It's again kind of a must-have foundational component. And so again, for us as a key takeaway, this gives more weight to conversations around why reviews are so important. And if especially a brand that has multiple locations, if they don't have any sort of reputation monitoring or strategy in place, they're not responding to reviews, that's going to kill their local SEO as well. So, they may say they only have a budget to specifically focus on like SEO and the website and all this stuff. Well, that's not going to work because reviews impact that just as highly. So, you really need a kind of a global strategy there. And then again, just emphasizing So, businesses that do understand kind of the behind the scenes SEO ways to optimize their website and acquire links is going to help them. And, they need a listing management strategy in place as well. All right, switching gears just slightly over to service area businesses and looking at some of the nuances with them as well. So if you're not familiar with the service area business, or SAB for short, it's essentially businesses that don't have like a brick and mortar location. They either operate like out of their home or through their phone. Essentially, it means typically that when they're assisting clients, they go to them. So that could be a lot of professionals like plumbers, heating and air conditioning, pest control. What else do we have? Dog groomers, moving companies, installers, lawnmowers, things like that, where they don't really need an office, carpet cleaners. They go and they do it at someone else's home. And just so you know, there is actually a category for this in Google, where you can indicate that you're a service area business, and you can let Google know how far you serve. So you can choose like your primary zip code, but then other areas that you service, and they'll actually cast this net around your area, and this actually shows up on your Google listing, so consumers can see like how far that business serves. And obviously, you want to make sure that you are applying all those. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on this area of business that you could have.
Is this painful? Because I watched one of those webinar things that was sent out. The lady was like a local Google My Business expert. She was saying for all of the people that don't have a physical location to work out of their house, if they wanted to like rank in the area, like so maybe city of Chicago, maybe she lives outside of the city, but she wants her business is all in Chicago. People are searching. She's not being down as what people were doing, but they were literally renting a space in the city so they could an address there. Is that not the case?
That's strange, because it seems like you can indicate you still have to enter in an address so it knows where you are located. Like I couldn't just say that, I'm a lawnmower and I mow lawns in Florida when I'm actually located in California. So there's a bit of validation around that, and it probably you probably rank better the closer you are to your centroid or whatever. So if you use your home or you use like a satellite office or something like that, that's probably advantageous for that region. You still can specify the areas that you service, but you're probably going to rank, again, because proximity is so important. Your rankings are going to be higher based on where you're most central. So some things to note about service area businesses, more so than other industries, word of mouth is extremely important. So 63% of consumers select contractors based on word of mouth. A lot of times it's because the person's coming into their home, like the trust value that is associated with a lot of these professionals is higher, or they're performing some, really important or complicated project for you. Whether they're installing something for you or fixing a plumbing issue or things like that, you're going to trust the word of mouth from friends, family, or even, contacts that you've known in the past, more so than just looking for like a coffee shop to try out for the first time. So internet search is lower. The other thing to mention with this as well is that this is even more so true in like the older demographics. So, a lot of homeowners are, older generations. And so they more so gravitate towards, word of mouth and other ways of finding businesses versus like the internet. So within our generation, it is a little bit higher, but something to be interested in. That aside, so for internet searches, reviews are still the most important factor. So when people are searching online, word of mouth and reviews are kind of one and the same. You're looking for testimonials from someone and gauging your experience based on that. So still an important factor. Paid ads are pretty popular in the space, although on traditional sites like Angie's List, Home Advisor, they're starting to lose market share to Google, because Google's been rolling out basically a form of advertising for service area businesses. And so they've actually launched these Google Guaranteed Professionals which are, they have to, if a business wants to apply to be a Google Guaranteed Professional, they have to pass like a background check. There's some quality controls in place there. That's to protect the consumer, but it's more so to protect Google, because with these Guaranteed Professionals, Google will actually reimburse you up to $2,000 if you're not satisfied with your experience with one of these. So how it works is that the business is paying Google for basically every lead that they're getting from these sponsored ads. And then Google is basically the insurance for the consumer, in case these businesses, don't have a good experience. But you can all see they're typically very highly ranked. So they have a pretty strict vetting process. Like any insurance, Google's not going to want to be on the hook for it. So it works though. It's a win-win for all involved. So this is still relatively new, and they were kind of looking at it as like a beta launch. And so businesses featured in the Google Guaranteed ads saw an 1,800% increase in leads based on this type of advertising versus other advertising they were doing prior.
It said 50 plus, but how many are on that guarantee? Is it just those 3, or how many is it show on a map?
Yeah, I'm sure that's dependent on your area, the industry, and how many they're able to find that they think would be a fit for you.
Like Palmer North Park.
Yeah. Yeah, so certainly there's still some other SEO in play there for even how you're ranked there. But you're only paying Google once you get a lead. So yeah, it's basically almost like a pay-per-click type of scenario here, where Google collects $25 for each customer they send you. All right, that's it. Any questions before we give out a few prizes? Anything?
What are the answers to the prize question?
We'll find out in a minute.
There's a lot of articles on websites that are mobile friendly. Hierarchy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, certainly. Especially since traditional SEO, as we've seen, is already a ranking factor in other ways for local search. Having a mobile-friendly site, having a easier user experience for a consumer, it certainly makes sense that would become a ranking factor as well. All right. So first question. So in the survey, so the first study that we were looking at, in the survey, what % were reviews as a ranking factor? Yep, you got it. Do you want? I think it was like 13.13 actually. So Brandon, you get a tonight review. All right, so in the study, so the second study we were looking at, what was the single most important ranking factor?
Website?
Yeah, how your website ranks for the same keyword search.
That's not what he said.
Lastly, what % of mobile searches result in a store visit?
I know, 18%.
18% result in a purchase within 24 hours. Donald got it. It's 50% result in a store visit, though. All right, that's all I got. I'll see you guys in the back lab.